Hi, Si here from Music Radar. We're in NAMM 2020. This is the Sonicware booth. This is Evan. Nice to meet you, Evan.
Yeah,
let's put it there.
Thank
you.
Yeah, thanks for coming by.
Obviously, we know the ELZ1, which was out. It's been out for a few years now.
Yep.
But you've dropped the Liven 8-bit warps on us.
Yes, that's right.
Tell us, well, like we were saying just now, Liven's like a new range for you guys.
Yes, it's a new range.
Yeah.
This is the first unit in our range. It is a it's a 64-step sequencer. And it's a synth-focused sequencer.
Okay.
And so the main workflow idea is that you can come up with a 64-step sequencer, like sequence, and then you can record it to one of 4 audio looper slots.
Right. Oh, cool.
So you make your sequence. Let's say you start with a bass line, and then let's say you want to clear out the sequence and make keys. Well, before you do that, you can record that into one of the audio loops. And the start and stop of the looper is quantized. So you hit it and then it'll start recording right at the beginning of your 64-step loop or whatever step length you want, and then it'll stop at the end and then it'll switch to the audio loop.
Right.
So that kind of a little bit similar to like an Ableton record clip kind of workflow. Yeah. And then you can clear out your sequence and maybe come up with your keys and then record that to an audio loop, and then come up with your pads and record that to an audio loop.
And you can mess with your loops. Once you've got the loops going, you can start going in there and...
Yeah. At this point, you can't modify the loops too much. You can start and stop them like in an unquantized way, or quantized depending on how you want to do it. And then the cool thing also is once you're in the looper section and you have your like loops in here, then these top knobs up here become a mixer.
Oh, right, okay.
So if you have your bass line here, you can like turn down the bass and kind of make like breaks in your songs and stuff like that. Yeah. Or you can start and stop the loops just by tapping these here when it's in looper mode. Okay. So it's kind of like, what you end up getting is like, you get your main sequence, then you can have 3 audio loops that are recorded from internally, and then you can have 1 external loop.
Oh, right, okay.
So the idea is if you had like one of like a drum brood or a Volca or something like that, and you wanted to free it up to make a new pattern, you can record that right into here.
Onto that.
Yeah, because it takes like sync input, and then it'll also probably be able to sync via MIDI.
Okay, sure.
So you can have everything synced up, and then you're like, oh, I can make a new pattern here because now this is handling the looping of it.
And the loops, can we like export them? Or like are they tied into the box, as it were?
They're tied into the box as audio because they're in the RAM.
Yeah. Okay.
But you can save a sequence in here and its associated sound, like preset. But it's not saved as audio. At that point, it's like a preset. So you can bring that up. And from a performance standpoint, if you're like, oh, like you could build out a whole song as pattern chunks.
Okay.
You know, chunks of MIDI with associated sound.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of the main workflow of it. It's got 4 oscillator models, and we can run through those real quick if you'd like.
Hear what they sound like.
So the first one is so I just tap memory here, and then all these buttons right here become the preset selectors.
Sure.
So this first one shows the warp mode. And the warp mode, you can choose 2 oscillators, and then you can crossfade between it. Right. And you can see there's a little grid here that kind of tells you what's happening. Oh, I'm in looper mode, so I got to turn that off.
Sure, okay, yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of waveforms in here, and then you can, the final version, you'll be able to import your own single cycle waveforms.
Okay.
So if you have one of those huge packs, you can do it, or we're hoping to also have a mode where it can record some sound and then pull a single cycle from that through the input.
Like on a sampling level sort of thing.
Exactly. So, and then here we have the Octave Control, so it gets pretty gritty in the low end. Okay. So that's the warp mode, is just crossfading between the 2. The next mode is called Attack. So it starts with one waveform and then like completely cuts to a different one.
All right.
So you can kind of hear it here, but if I turn up the attack, you can. That's what it's doing, right?
Yeah.
And then.
Chiptune sort of feature.
Yeah, chiptune kind of thing. If you turn it up higher, it sounds like the fireball from Mario.
Yeah.
Cool. So that one's pretty fun, and you can kind of mess with, having a really harsh oscillator in the beginning and then a smoother one for the second part of the sound.
Yeah.
And then in combination with the attack and decay, the ADSR in here, you can really shape a sound to get what you want. The Morph Mode is it's a 8-bit wavetable. So right now the frequency modulation is on, but yeah, there we go. So you can hear it's morphing between the two waves.
Yeah.
And then you can control the
time.
The time there, and then and then we have a bunch of we have a FM synth, 8-bit FM synth as well. So. Yeah, so there's a really big sonic palette inside of this, and it's all 8-bit sound, so it's like real grimy and dirty, and sounds really good, especially when you get a bunch of loops going. It all kind of meshes together into a nice, dirty mess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then after the synth engine, we've got the voice modes, we've got different sort of playing abilities. You got mono legato, unison, ARP as well.
Yeah, cool. So it's got a mono mode, so if you hit that, it'll just re-trigger the envelope. The legato mode will morph between, the pitch will bend as it's going to different notes. The unison, that mode I think will use every pitch here has a detune, kind of a unison detune. This mode isn't done yet, but I suspect what it's going to be is instead of it being 8-note polyphonic like it is now, it'll be 1-note polyphonic and use all the voices on a single one. So you get a really heavy monophonic sound. And then the ARP mode will be, your standard arpeggiator with different patterns and stuff like that.
And these things aren't quite implemented just yet, right?
Yeah, the unison and the ARP aren't implemented. Yeah. Right now you can only play in live on here, but the final version you'll be able to just tap in your sequence if you want. The other thing we're working on is having all of the automation be recorded into the sequence, so that you could come up with your sequence. You can already come up with your sequence and then tweak all the knobs afterwards to modify the sound.
Yeah.
But what we want to do is be able to, with the sequencer, be able to like turn the filter and do kind of automation and changes to the sound, and then have it, when it restarts the sequence, be able to record it.
Nice, yeah.
Because the Korg Electribe does that, and it's one of its like my favorite features about it is that you can really get really cool motion sequencing. So we're working on that that part of it as well. You can already kind of do that when you're recording to an audio loop.
Yeah.
So if you're recording to the looper, you can make modifications and then it's, recorded to audio. Yeah.
Okay, well I think it's the perfect time for us to have a listen to it in action.
Yes.
And we're going to draft in a colleague, is that right?
Yes, Dr. Yu Endo, he's our CEO.
Awesome.
And he has a performance and a awesome sequence in here that he can play for y'all.
Awesome.